So, it hits you sometimes, doesn't it? The sheer weight of, mental health challenges all around us,
Yeah.
and this feeling that we're not really equipped. I mean,
Hmm.
think about this stat. Even if we had 10 times as many therapists right now,
Right.
we still wouldn't meet the demand. That's according to Nick Jacobson at Dartmouth.
Yeah.
It puts things in perspective.
It really does. It highlights this urgent need to look at different ways to offer support. Seriously.
Which is exactly what we're digging into today, the world of artificial intelligence, AI, in mental health care.
Yeah.
And this isn't some, far-off sci-fi idea. It's happening now. Research development, folks at Dartmouth College are right in the thick of it with their app, Therabot.
That's right. And we've been looking at this recent piece in the Economic Times. It lays out their work, but also the wider picture of AI mental health tools.
Exactly. So our goal today, it isn't just to get swept up in the excitement. It's to really try and understand what AI could actually offer here, the potential support, but also the very real questions that need answers.
We're trying to focus on what the evidence is starting to show us beyond the hype.
And for you listening, maybe you want to get a solid grasp on this without spending ages researching.
Oh,
That's what we're aiming for.
yeah. Pull out the important bits. Try to make sense of it all.
Okay, so let's start with this Dartmouth research. Therabot. You said their approach is distinct.
Yeah, what's really interesting, I think, is their clear intention. They want to legitimize AI in mental health care.
Legitimize. Okay.
They're not just, throwing another app out there. They're trying to build something the medical community can actually, well, trust.
Right. Something that maybe goes beyond some of the apps we see that don't always have the science backing them up.
Exactly. And they seem to have some results to support that aim, too. The article mentions a clinical study.
Oh, yeah.
Therabot apparently showed effectiveness for
Mhm.
people dealing with anxiety, depression, even eating disorders.
Wow. Okay. That's a pretty wide range.
It is. And they've got another trial coming up, a comparison trial
Comparing it to what?
to conventional therapies.
Yeah.
Head to head. That's really the crucial next step, isn't it? To see how it stacks up in the real world.
Absolutely. And this wasn't a rushed thing either?
No, not at all. Michael Hines, one of the researchers, pointed out they've spent nearly 6 years developing it.
6 years. Wow.
Yeah, with a really strong focus on safety and effectiveness. That kind of careful, measured approach, it seems pretty significant.
It really does, especially when you think, like you said, about other apps maybe focusing more on profit or just engagement.
That prioritization is key. And something else, they're considering a non-profit model for Therabot.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, if they go that route, it could massively improve access for people who just, can't afford traditional therapy.
Right. That really speaks to that huge unmet need we started with.
Exactly. It puts the impact first.
Okay, so they're being careful. What about how they actually train the AI? It wasn't just feeding it recordings of therapy sessions, was it?
No, and that's a really important point, actually. They wanted to minimize sort of unexpected outcomes and really refine the AI's responses.
Ah.
They manually created simulated patient-caregiver conversations.
Ah, okay. So simulated chats.
Right. This way, they can carefully control the scenarios the AI learns from. And crucially, it helps avoid potential biases that might be lurking in real therapy transcripts or videos.
That makes sense. A big advantage, I'd imagine.
Definitely.
Okay, so Dartmouth is taking this very thoughtful research-first path. But what about the broader landscape? The article mentions the American Psychological Association, the APA. What's their take?
Well, connecting it to the bigger picture, the APA, through comments from Vail Wright, seems to have this view of cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism.
They see the promise of AI chatbots, for
Okay.
sure. But, and it's a big but, with important conditions.
Like what?
Well, these tools, she emphasizes, they need to be grounded in actual science, developed with experts, not just tech folks, and rolls out ethically, responsibly.
Right.
And there's a particular concern about younger users. Potential harm if they're more easily influenced or the tech isn't quite right.
That's a really valid point. We see how persuasive algorithms can be elsewhere online. Applying that to mental health. Yeah, that needs care.
Definitely. And Wright also seemed worried that some existing apps might be designed more just to keep people hooked.
For engagement, revenue.
Exactly. Rather than actually providing real help. That's a critical concern.
The worry being they just tell users what they want to hear to keep them clicking.
Potentially. Which isn't just ineffective, it could be harmful, especially for vulnerable people who might not, recognize those tactics.
Hmm. And there was another APA voice mentioned, Darlene King.
Yeah, Darlene King also highlighted the potential, but really stressed that we just need more information.
More data on the benefits and the risks.
Exactly. She basically said, there are still a lot of questions. It feels like the professional community is still very much in an assessment phase. Careful assessment.
So interested, sees potential, but needs more solid proof before a big thumbs up.
That sums it up pretty well. There's this acknowledgement it could boost access, but also a strong sense that we're early days. We need more solid evidence.
It really raises that question, doesn't it? How do you balance the excitement around new tech with the absolute need for safety and effectiveness in mental health?
It's a really delicate balance.
Now, the article also brought in someone from the commercial side, right? Herbert Bay from Earkick.
Yes, Herbert Bay, CEO of Earkick. He was defending their AI therapist, Panda.
And he sounded pretty confident.
Quite positive, yeah. He called it super safe, emphasized its ability to spot crises and send alerts, which is important.
Okay, crisis detection. That's a key feature.
He also mentioned they have an ongoing clinical study, which again points towards trying to get that evidence.
Yeah.
But he also brought up as a contrast that character.ai situation.
Oh, right. The tragic case where a chatbot relationship was linked to a teenager's suicide.
Exactly. A really stark reminder of the potential dangers and why safety measures are just non-negotiable.
Absolutely sobering. Did Bay suggest where AI fits best right now?
He seemed to think it's maybe better suited currently for day-to-day mental health support.
Like, not major crises, but ongoing management.
Sort of. And he highlighted that 24/7 availability. The chatbot is always there, unlike a human therapist with appointments.
That accessibility point comes up again. It's a strong argument, the always-on aspect.
It is. The idea that support is there anytime, anywhere. It's appealing, especially for people facing barriers like cost or location or even just stigma around seeking help.
Yeah, definitely. And then there was that anecdote about a user named Darren.
Right. Yeah, finding ChatGPT helpful.
Which isn't even designed for mental health, is it? It's a general AI.
Exactly. It's not a clinically validated tool at all. But Darren found it helpful for managing traumatic stress disorder. Said he'd recommend it for anxiety, distress.
That's kind of surprising.
It is anecdotal, we have to stress that.
Yeah.
But it shows people are already turning to AI for this kind of support, whether it's the intended use or not.
It really underlines that unmet need again, doesn't it? And maybe shows even basic AI can offer some level of comfort or helps sometimes.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, so we've got Dartmouth's careful research, the APA's cautious optimism, these commercial players like Earkick emerging. What about regulation? Who's actually overseeing all this stuff?
Well, the regulatory side in the U.S., as the article notes, it's still evolving.
Okay.
The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they don't exactly certify these AI apps like they would a traditional medical device or a drug.
Ah, okay. So they don't give it a stamp of approval saying this works.
Not quite in that way. Instead, the language is that the FDA may authorize their marketing after a review.
Authorized marketing. So it's more like permission to sell it rather than a full endorsement.
That seems to be a fair distinction, yes. It allows it onto the market. But the FDA does acknowledge the potential to improve patient access to behavioral therapies.
So they see the promise too.
It suggests they do, yeah. But they're likely still figuring out the best way to oversee this field because it's moving so fast.
Okay. So the rules are still kind of catching up with the technology.
It looks that way.
Yeah.
We might see more defined regulations as things progress.
Right. So if we try and pull all these threads together, Dartmouth, APA, Earkick, the FDA situation, what kind of future does it paint?
Well, looking at the big picture, it seems pretty likely that AI will play a bigger role in mental health care going forward.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that role is probably going to be shaped quite heavily by the ongoing research. How well does it actually work? How safe is it really? And also by how the regulations develop.
So it's probably not going to just replace human therapists entirely anytime soon.
Unlikely. It seems more plausible it becomes a tool, something to maybe augment human care, broaden access,
Yeah.
makes support available in different ways.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways. We've definitely seen the really interesting, quite rigorous work happening at Dartmouth with Therabot, really aiming to prove AI's place.
Yeah, that focus on legitimacy is key.
Then we heard the professional view, like from the APA, Measured optimism, you called it,
Yeah.
but also very real concerns about ethics, safety, especially for younger people.
Absolutely. Caution alongside the potential.
And we've seen the rise of commercial AI therapists like Panda from Earkick pushing features like crisis detection alongside these sort of unexpected uses, like Darren finding ChatGPT helpful.
Right. It shows the breadth of activity, from rigorous science to commercial products to organic user adoption.
It definitely feels like a field with enormous potential, but also just loaded with unanswered questions still.
That's spot on. The
Yeah.
potential to help with that massive shortage of mental health professionals is significant. Huge even. But it's absolutely vital that we, learn to differentiate. Tell the difference between apps based on solid research developed responsibly.
And those may be just driven by engagement metrics or profit motives?
Precisely. And the kind of rigorous testing the Dartmouth team is doing, and the studies companies like Earkick say they're doing, that evidence is going to be crucial. That's what will help us make that distinction over time.
Okay. So here's maybe the final thought for you to chew on. As AI gets more and more woven into mental health care, how do we as a society strike that balance? Balancing the clear potential for better access, for innovation, with the absolute need to ensure safety, effectiveness, and that crucial human element, that connection that's always been so central to therapy.
It's the core question, isn't it?
It really is. And what are the long-term effects, societally? If we increasingly rely on AI for something so deeply personal, so complex as our emotional well-being.
Yeah, big questions.
Fascinating stuff and incredibly important. Definitely something we'll keep exploring here on The Deep Dive.